And that's a hard one, because it can go either way. It can genuinely go either way. Let me drop back one step and just in a nutshell, if I can, underscore something that is important to me in my understanding of what it is to do philosophy. I take philosophy, unlike many, many philosophers, I take it as being inevitably what we call in the trade second order or meta. You don't just do philosophy, you do philosophy of something. So what does that mean? Well, that means that as a philosopher, I might decide that I want to examine, not do, but examine religion, particularly to examine how it works, what it assumes, what kind of logic it follows. Map it out, get some kind of an internal understanding of how does this machine run. Now, sidebar, most of the graduate students that I knew when I was going through graduate school in the 1960s shared that kind of view, and most of us had come out of majors in chemistry or mathematics or religion or history or whatnot, and wound up doing philosophy of science or philosophy of mathematics or philosophy of religion or whatnot. There was not much emphasis on weaving an all-inclusive world picture. It was a much more narrowly scoped mapping enterprise. But when you get done with that, and if you stick with it, inevitably you're going to ask yourself, well, what do the results of philosophizing about religion and the results of philosophizing about science say about how religion and science relate to each other? Can any bridges be built? And we'll come back to that later on. But that can expand and that can expand. And as you begin to do that, you move out of what I call philosophical analysis and into what I call philosophical synthesis. And philosophical synthesis is the attempt to weave a capital P philosophy or a capital W worldview out of the results of all of that localized mapping and analysis. So I think in that capital P, capital W sense, worldview, philosophy, we're talking about much the same thing. But for me, most of my career, that has been a little bit too grand. It's sort of, as they say these days, a little bit beyond my pay grade. I've worked a lot on the relationships between religion and ethics. I've worked a lot on the relationship between ethics and science and on the relations between science and ethics, science and philosophy. But there's an awful lot out there, I never really got to. So I don't really have a philosophy of history or a philosophy of literature or something of the sort, a little bit outside my own bailiwick. Last comment. The notion of a big-scale worldview, or to use a word that we used to use when I was in grad school much more often, Weltanschauung, that good German, all-inclusive grasping of the world as a whole. That has been more commonly identified with continental philosophy, European philosophy, than it has been with Anglo-American philosophy. And that's not to say that it's better or that it's worse. It's just one of the big differences between the kind of philosophy back in mid-20th century was going on the two sides of the pond, or the two sides of the English Channel, really.